Hello guys, welcome you to another geography lesson this time in our virtual classroom. And today we're going to continue the topic of climate, of what it looks like in the real world. And guys, last week we learned that climate can be referred to as an average weather of a certain region. And it turns out that depending on where you are in the globe, this average weather is something totally different. And guys, today I want you to take a look at this map. It's a picture I took of a map that you have in your textbook on page 108. And this presents so-called climatic zones of Earth. The first thing that you notice when you take a look at this map is that the climates in the whole world, they look like stripes that are aligned just similarly to the parallels. And guys, let's talk a little bit more about them. The things that you see here are so-called climatic zones. Po polsku to są strefy klimatyczne. And guys, when you take a look at the equator, you can clearly see that one of the widest stripes is the stripe that is marked in red, and this is the tropical rainforest climate. Tropical rainforest climate po polsku to jest klimat równikowy. And guys, this is a single stripe that goes around the whole globe along the equator. There are two following stripes marked in orange. One is here, and this is the single one stripe, and the second one is on the southern hemisphere, and this is the tropical climate. Po polsku to jest klimat zwrotnikowy. More to the north and more to the south, we have another zone of climate, which is marked in yellow. The northern one is here, the southern one is here, and this is called the subtropical zone. Czyli po polsku klimat podzwrotnikowy. There is also the really wide stripe of green in this map, and as you can see, most of the Europe belongs to this climate, as well as a huge part of Asia, and this is the zone of climate so-called temperate. Po polsku to są klimaty umiarkowane. And guys, you can see in the south that this stripe is really thin, totally unlike the stripe in the north. The climate that is around the poles is called, of course, polar climate. Po polsku klimat polarny. So, I don't know what happened here. Strefe. Guys, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different climatic zones on Earth. If we take a look at the equator, and the Earth, we will see that it looks more or less like this, the very simplified version. So here we have the warmest climate that is on Earth, which is the tropical rainforest. More to the south, to the south and north, depending on which hemisphere you're at, we have the tropical climate. Then we have a stripe of subtropical climate, and then temperate and polar. Temperate or moderate, you can hear those two names. The same thing happens on the other hemisphere. So I won't be drawing the second hemisphere in this diagram, but what you have to know is that we have one huge stripe of tropical rainforest climate, two stripes of tropical zone, two stripes of subtropical zone, two stripes of moderate/temperate climate, and two stripes of polar climate. So we have one on the northern hemisphere and the second in the southern, and the same thing applies to all the rest. But guys, it might happen that some places are slightly bit different than what they should be according to this map. And let's move to Indian Peninsula, which is here, and let's take a look at what's happening in here. This region is Himalaya mountains, as well as the Tibet itself. Anyway, according to this map, this region is located somewhere in the subtropical zone. So we would expect that if this is the really hottest climate, then this is also really warm. This is much colder than the tropical one, but still you might expect really warm periods. Moderate climate is something like we have in Poland, and polar climate is really, really cold. So you might expect that Himalaya mountains will be quite warm, usually with two seasons in the year, when you have the dry period and you have the wet period where there is plenty of rain. But it turns out that this is all covered in snow for the most of the year. And what do we do in such situations? It turns out that we have two categories of climates. We have zonal climates, czyli klimaty strefowe, and subzonal, which are po polsku klimaty astrefowe. It turns out that the absolute height above sea level of some areas is extremely important in terms of determining what climate we have. And guys, zonal climates we will have in places like at moderate, at low heights above sea level, and those are usually in the general climatic zones. If it comes to subzonal climates, then those are mostly mountain ranges. The same thing applies, for instance, to Andi mountains, which are located here. They cross a few climatic zones, and basically, this is another example of subzonal climate. But also, the factor that changes climate a lot is the distance to water. Because water, due to its physical properties, is able to hold a lot of energy, which basically translates to the temperature. So, the closer you are to the sea, the closer you are to the ocean, the amplitude of the temperature will be lower. So that means that the temperature is much more stable. The farther you are from water, it turns out that the amplitudes of temperature are so different. And guys, let's take a look at the map. Somewhere here we have London. Uh, this is the capital of the UK, of course, but according to this map, it's located in the temperate climatic zone. A random city located in the middle of Asia, is located in the same climatic stripe, but it turns out that the weather here will be totally different. In London, we can expect much of a rainfall, quite warm and mild winters without much snow, mostly with rain, and not that warm summers. But in this place called X, what you will expect is basically very hot summers with absolutely no rainfall, and very extremely cold winters with temperatures dropping to -20 or even 30 degrees Celsius. And they are both in the same region. How is that possible? Because we can divide climates into two following groups as well. We can have oceanic climates, czyli klimaty morskie, and we might have climates that are called continental, czyli kontynentalne. And guys, the main difference between them is that oceanic climates are where it's closer to any kind of water, any huge bodies of water. Continental climates are in the middle of the land. And guys, the difference between them is the oceanic climates are mild, damp, and they have damp, which means quite a lot of precipitation, quite a lot of rain, damp summers and winters. and also very low amplitudes of temperature. If it comes to continental, then they are much more severe. Freezing winters, hot summers, and huge amplitudes of temperatures. So guys, here in this case we divide climates by the place, and here we divide climates by distance to water. By place in climates, the first one here, by place, and basically height above sea level. And here it's only the distance of from water. But guys, one of the climate is one of the most important factors that generally affect life. So life had to somehow adjust to the climate zone that it lives in. And this led to this. Here we have an example of landscape zone map. And guys, I know that you cannot read the legend, but I will do some subtitles now. This is a picture of a map that is hanging on my wall. And guys, tropical. The next one is temperate forest. The next one is another forest, maybe some mixed one. The next one is Mediterranean type of landscape. For instance, this one is desert. This one is tundra. This one is glacier. And guys, when you take a look at this map, you will see that basically they are all over the world and they more or less match the stripes. So here and here we have tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest. The same thing is Indonesia in here. Here we have a desert, a long stripe of deserts that basically belongs to the stripe of tropical climates. Here we have a huge stripe of taiga, which are basically trees, not deciduous ones, but the ones with needles. So spruces, so pines. The same thing happens in here, taiga. What else? If it comes to Mediterranean climate, then we might expect it to happen somewhere around the Mediterranean Sea, maybe something like this, Mediterranean. But it will also show up in this area. And guys, as you can see, the type of plants that grow. Europe is mixed forests. The type of plants that grow depends heavily on the climate. What else, guys? Here we also have a desert. And here just a little bit more of a desert. But there are some subzonal climates, just like this, and this, and a little bit of this, and this. And we could actually put this small dot in here where Alpine mountain range is also in some really small place a subzonal climate. Guys, they also align to the Earth. So let's draw the Earth something like this. Here we have the North Pole. Here we have the equator. And guys, just around the equator, we will have, of course, the tropical rainforest. A little bit more north in this case, we will have another stripe of landscape, which are savannas. And savannas are basically like meadows with mostly grasses, some single trees. Uh, do you know the story about Lion the King? Well, for unknown reasons, some people refer to lions as to kings of the jungle, which is not true because lions never live in the jungle, which is the tropical rainforest. They live on savanna, so they are the kings of savanna. More north to savanna stripe, we have the hot deserts stripe. More to the north, we have the Mediterranean stripe. Mm, czyli po polsku roślinność śródziemnomorska. More to the north, we will have two separate groups depending on whether it's more oceanic or continental. So we have deciduous / mixed forests or steppes, which are vast meadows. But unlike savannas, steppes are much more humid, there is much more water in them, and different species live there. Then we have taiga, which is basically a mostly pines, spruces, and other trees that have needles instead of leaves. Then we have tundra, which is way too cold for anything, for any tree to grow. So mostly lichens will grow there and some mosses. And in the North Pole, we will have something that is called the cold desert. Pustynia chłodna, pustynia lodowa. And guys, you have this diagram. I'd like you to take a look on page 111. It's the same. But guys, there is something interesting in this map. We think that the more to the south, the closer to the equator, the warmer it should be, right? That would make sense on one hand. But it turns out that on the globe, The warmer it is, the closer to the tropics. And around the hot deserts were actually developed nearby tropics because it turns out that here in the tropical rainforest it's very humid. There is plenty of water, so it's very warm, but life has perfect conditions to thrive. If it comes to savanna, then this is an area that is in between. So the more to the north you go, the fewer trees you will see. The drier it will get. And when you hit hot desert, then basically it's just dry. By the way, sand makes only 20% of deserts. Most of the deserts are just made of rocks. The more to the north you go, once again, you will see the Mediterranean landscape, which consists of plants that are well equipped to survive in conditions of a little bit of water, but really hot conditions. So their leaves are covered in a thin layer of wax that is protecting them from losing water. The more to the north you move, you will see more deciduous trees, the ones that have leaves, and mixed forests. If you go to the middle of the Asia, let's go back to this map for a second. So, if you go from the desert, Sahara Desert here, you will see the Mediterranean zone in here. Then more to the north, you will see deciduous forests. But if you went from this area, and let's ignore the fact that we have mountains here, then you would see some of the Mediterranean forms of life. And here, what you will notice is steppes. And from both of them, the more to the north you go, the more you will see pines, spruces, etc. So the colder it gets, the fewer trees, so tundras, lichens, mosses. And here there is actually no plants at all. So guys, uh, we have climatic zones which heavily which basically describe the climate, which has nothing to do with, which doesn't originate from the vegetation, from the plants and trees and animals that live. And we have also landscape zones, which basically is divided based on types of trees and types of plants or lack of plants that grow in some areas. So guys, this is it for now. Thank you for your attention. Please carefully read the instructions that are attached to the post.